What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the DFS OGs podcast right here on RotoGrinders, talking everything Week 7. We'll break down each and every game for you, starting with Thursday night here in Part 1. We'll cover all the early games. In Part 2, we'll cover the rest of the games. And the best part of the show, we'll answer some user questions at the end of that. So come on back for Part 2. That will be posted sometime tomorrow. But Part 1 will be football. We'll try to give you the analysis to help you take down some big money. I'm your host, Chris, Beermakers fan Prince, joined as always by the OGs, Chop, Noto. Guys, how was Week 6? Chop, we'll get started with you.
Week 6 was something I'd rather put in my rearview mirror. That was pretty bad. So it was just bad on all accounts. Football, NFL, college, all of it. So, yeah, let's move on, man.
You're meaning to tell me you didn't end up on the Brock Osweiler, Albert Wilson stack somehow to win $1 million?
Quite the opposite. I was actually almost all in on the Bears defense when I heard Big Brock was starting, but that's just the way that week went. There you go. Summarize the whole week in one thing. It's I was on the Bears and Brock did that to the Bears defense. Unbelievable.
I was talking to a buddy of mine. I said I could have probably built 1,000 lineups and not ended up on Brock Osweiler, to be honest with you. So kudos to that guy, but it just shows you how crazy this season has been. So sounds like a pouring off for Week 6 for me and for Chop. Derek, please tell us some good news. Are we making it 3 for 3?
Oh, man. In terms of DFS, yeah, I'm right there with you guys. I believe I got $5 back. And
nice.
And I didn't even play any entry below $9. So that's how bad the week was. Had fun in Denver, but I don't swear all that often, but I froze my ass off on Sunday. Yeah, I mean, other than having fun in Denver, it was not the best week for me.
All right, so we'll all pour one out to Week 6, and that's the beauty of daily fantasy sports. You turn the page, you move on to the next week. Now, unfortunately, guys, we have to move on to Thursday night, and this game, not too exciting, Derek. Speaking of Denver, we have Denver and we have Arizona as our Thursday night island game here. So, as always, let's cover it from the showdown pricing here. What are we seeing here? Who are you looking at for that captain spot on DraftKings? But it looks like an ugly game to me, but we got to play somebody, Derek. Who's it going to be here? Broncos and Cardinals.
Yeah, once again, my showdown record has not been good so far this season, but I'll give my thoughts on it anyway. I like David Johnson as my captain. I think really good spot for him. The Broncos have given up over 500 rushing yards to Crowell, Powell, and Gurley over the last 2 games. DJ has gotten a lot of work inside the red zone. Probably should have had a couple more touchdowns, last week. So I think he's going to be my captain. Don't mind looking at Ricky Seals-Jones. Pretty nice matchup against the Broncos. Like we're going to see Chris Harris on Fitzgerald. So, I think those two would be the guys that I like over in Arizona. Now on the Broncos, the only player that I really see here is Emmanuel Sanders. He's had 5 red zone targets over the last 2 games. Demaryius Thomas likely going to see some of Patrick Peterson, so not a ton of interest there. And then we have the 3-way split when it comes to their running backs. I do think you can play the defenses here, especially Arizona's D. They have a good pass rush, and Denver just lost their left guard. So maybe you just play defenses, kickers, and David Johnson.
That may be it. I mean, I'd love to attack this Arizona team with a running back, but who do we play? Lindsey, 7,600. Freeman all the way down to 5,600. And even Booker getting snaps down at 3K. So, Chop, you're the short slate expert here amongst us. So, thoughts here on this Cardinals and Broncos game?
Yo, before we even get to this game, I gotta get one out. I gotta get something off my chest here. I'm sitting here trying to do this podcast, and right before I got on, I realized one of the smoke detectors had a low battery. What in the – can't they make – we're in 2018. Can we do this a little bit easier, guys, besides trying to search for that low battery and not – I mean, what is going on here? This is crazy stuff. I just got to do the podcast with that thing beeping in the background. But that's – I mean, the technology, guys, come on, man. I think we could do it a little bit better than this, man. But
let me stay on this subject while we're here real quick, because mine always go – the last one went off at like 2:30 in the morning.
Oh, my God, dude.
It was in my bedroom, and I have the high ceiling where you're not just grabbing the thing. You got to go all the way downstairs. You got to get the ladder. You're waking everybody up because you're banging the damn ladder on the stairs, on the wall. The wife's bitching at you to get this thing done. Up on a ladder at 3 a.m. changing a battery. So I'm totally with you. Like we got to be able to figure this out. That and cell phone batteries. Can I get a phone where a battery of my phone doesn't die halfway through the day? That's all we're asking here. So, Derek, you want to add anything to that before we get to Chop's football analysis?
Oh, yeah. My house is a little older, too, so I can never find the one that's beeping. I'm always just standing right underneath it and still can't tell which one it is. So, yeah.
The hunt for Red October, I guess. So, Chop, let's talk Cardinals and Broncos now that we're done with fire alarms.
Showdown slate is always, you could just throw stuff at a wall and hope it sticks as long as your team makes sense and it plays off of each other pretty well. So, for me, I got a feeling David Johnson is going to be the most popular guy. I don't even mind fading David Johnson in a showdown slate, taking that chance. I mean, I read the numbers on him where, like, he's averaging like 3 yards a carry or something terrible like that. Almost all of his carries are right up the middle. I mean, I know Denver's leaky on defense with the run, but this offense is no Todd Gurley. You know, Arizona, our offense is pretty bad. So I wouldn't mind fading David Johnson. I'll take a shot on Christian Kirk because he really looks good with the new quarterback change. I'll take a shot on Ricky Seals-Jones. He's looking better. He was all right last week. And on the flip side, I will definitely have plenty of exposure to Royce Freeman and Phillip Lindsay. I'll hope that it's a run-heavy Denver attack on this Arizona defense, and that's the way I'll go. And if I'm picking a wide receiver, Emmanuel Sanders looks like the clear-cut preferred option for Case Keenum.
Yeah, these two teams are both bottom 4 in fantasy points allowed to the running back. So I think this is a great spot to pick that spot. I agree. Somewhat, Chop. You might want to fade David Johnson in some lineups, but in other ones, I think you got to have some exposure there. Denver's given up big games back-to-back to Isaiah Crowell and Todd Gurley. So the passing usage for David Johnson is what's frustrating. We keep saying, are they going to figure it out? Well, we're 6-7 weeks into the season. I don't know that they're going to figure it out all of a sudden here, especially on a short week. So an interesting game, but a 41 total. Not a lot to love there. So play the slate. I wouldn't go crazy on it. Take a shot like Chop said, see what sticks. But I agree, Derek. Kickers defense is maybe the way to go in that one. All right, let's move on to the main slate here. Let's start with Tennessee and the Chargers. Chop. Looks like an early start here. Must be a London game, I'm guessing. So let's start with Tennessee. I mean, how in the hell do you give up more sacks than passes completed by your quarterback? I mean, that is a feat in of itself.
Yeah, these guys are struggling for sure. And what's weird about the Tennessee thing last week was that, you know, the strength of their team is their offensive line, and how they got demolished like that, I have no idea. So I'm kind of glad this is, you know, a 8:30 in the morning game overseas, and we really don't have to deal with it on the main slate. It's a pretty boring game if you ask me. I think the Chargers defense is in good shape. Tennessee just doesn't look good right now. Mariota's just, I don't know. He's struggling with that injury. He doesn't look this. They got one weapon. That's Corey Davis. Outside of him, you don't have to worry about anything on this team. On the flip side, the Chargers actually look good. Last week it was Tyrell Williams. Any week now it'll be Keenan Allen again. We've seen Mike Williams have big weeks. Melvin Gordon is the steady guy in here. You could always play Melvin Gordon and that'd be fine. But I'm kind of glad this is off the main slate. I don't want to have to deal with it, but the Chargers could go anywhere for their offense, and Tennessee has one spot, and that's Corey Davis. So it's an odd game.
Yeah, and we know Tennessee playing very slow, not a lot of pace. So like I said, this one, if you're going to play the full week slate, you're going to deal with this one. If not, I'm with you. I'm glad it's not on the main slate. Pretty much an easy fade for me. As good as Melvin Gordon's been playing, Derek, I have a hard time going there even in this matchup. So thoughts here real quick, and then we'll get to the real main slate starting with the next game.
Yeah, I think if I'm playing the Thursday to Monday slate, I'm not having anyone from this game. If you're playing, there's probably going to be a showdown pricing for this one, I'd imagine, on Sunday morning. So maybe you can get your exposure to it that way, but not in love with it. Agree with you guys. Mariota looked awful last week. You took 11 hits and all of them were sacks, which is kind of crazy. Deion Lewis ended up, getting 73% of the snaps, but they were playing from behind. So for now, I'm just going to avoid that situation. Maybe Corey Davis will be locked up against Casey Hayward if you want to take a deep tournament play on Taywan Taylor. But yeah, it's going to be the Chargers for me. I like Gordon, in the smaller slate. And then if you want to look at Keenan Allen, he's had 0 touchdowns in his last 5 games, but 40 targets during that stretch. So eventually, as Chop would say, touchdown progression is coming his way.
There you go.
A little progression. So, Chop, normally you're a breaking news guy, but something just came across my desk. So I wanted to pass it along here. Devonta Freeman placed on injured reserve, going to be out for the season. So, not a team we're going to cover on the main slate, but we'll cover it when we get to Monday Night Football. I think it's interesting. Tevin Coleman and old Judge Ito Smith playing well. So we'll cover that in part 2. But let's get to the main slate here, Derek. Cleveland and Tampa, a game that we definitely want some exposure to. Total looking like 50, close spread in this one. And Tampa's defense giving up about 35 points a game. Is this a spot for Baker Mayfield, for Jarvis Landry, the rest of this Cleveland offense to get healthy?
Yeah, one of my third and wrongs from last week was Jarvis Landry. Just absolutely killed me. It seemed like every time Baker threw in the ball, it was just a terrible throw or got picked off. So I'm hoping for a bounce-back game from those two. If this isn't it, I don't know where they're going to find it. But a great matchup against the Buccaneers. They are 32nd in DVOA against the pass, and they have the lowest adjusted sack rate of any team in the slate. So hopefully Baker's going to have some time. I do like pairing him up with Landry. That's just fine with me. I also like Njoku. 12 targets last week against the Chargers, which was a tough matchup. Now he gets the Bucks, who are 30th in DVOA against tight ends. So it's going to be all things Browns here. I actually don't mind the running backs. Carlos Hyde getting a ton of work inside the red zone. You have Duke Johnson over 50% of the snaps in the last 2 games. So a lot to like on that side, and you can certainly play some of the Bucks as well. Winston looked pretty good last week. I think he ended up being the highest scoring quarterback of the slate. And then their running backs, Peyton Barber, ended up playing 62% of the snaps, had that big game. Jones and Rodgers both under 20%. And it looks like Barber's pretty cheap again, $3,800. I know the Browns have a pretty decent defense overall, but they haven't been great against the running back position. So I do think people are going to look Barber's way a little bit. And Mike Evans always going to be in play anytime Winston's under center.
Yeah, again, these are 2 teams bottom 10 in the league against the running back position. But, last week Tampa was, do we want to play Ronald Jones? Do we want to play Peyton Barber? It was Barber having the big game. So, Chop, Tampa fires their defensive coordinator. Is it going to make any bit of a difference here? Are they going to figure it out here against Cleveland?
No, they don't. No, I don't think so. This is the kind of this is the kind of stuff I like. Is when you get a team like Cleveland who's going to kind of fly under the radar. I know it's a good matchup, but people are kind of bored with the whole Mayfield thing, and Jarvis Landry let them down. Man, I think you could go to any one of these pass catchers: Landry, Callaway, Njoku, Mayfield. Even at some point here a couple weeks ago, it looked like they were getting Duke Johnson a little bit more involved. Maybe even Duke Johnson here, if you think Tampa Bay is going to jump out and make Cleveland pass a little bit. So I like the whole passing game for Cleveland. I'll be very heavy on that. On the flip side, I agree with the Jameis Winston kind of makes this thing go, man. Jameis Winston's in there. Mike Evans is typically going to be the guy he looks to. I like a little Mike Evans, even though Mike let me down last week against Atlanta. But, not an easy matchup out there with that particular cornerback. So I'll give him a pass. And running back again this week, Deshaun is the guy who always seems to me, since they signed him last year, is kind of the guy who gets left out in the cold when Jameis is quarterbacking. So not sure I want to go there with Deshaun Jackson. A little bit surprised. Well, I've been getting Humphreys and Godwin wrong quite a bit this year. When I thought it was going to be Godwin, Humphreys was coming in stealing all the targets last week. I was like, all right, let's go with some Humphreys. And, of course, it's Godwin who's getting all the looks. So I don't know what to do there. Maybe just stick to Mike Evans. But O.J. Howard looks good. I don't know how he miraculously covered from a 3 to 6 week knee injury, comes out, catches a touchdown and 50 yards worth of passes, and looks like he never even suffered anything. But I guess that's the beauty of being young and in shape. I don't know about those days anymore, but you can run O.J. Howard's perfectly fine, in my opinion. So, yeah, I like the passing in both these games. Look really, really solid.
Yeah, for sure. So, Chopped, how long would you be on the shelf with that injury?
Man, I have to say that I was doing a little work on my car about 2 months ago, and I must have just been kneeling in the wrong position because I woke up the next morning and my knee hurt, and it's 2 months later and my knee still hurts, and I don't even want to get out of bed some days. So I don't even know what I would do with a severe knee injury like Howard suffered, but I can't even handle a little tweak anymore like this without suffering for 2 months.
Yeah, the OGs were getting up there in age, man. So that's the difference. OJ versus OGs. And
The question, well, Derek's too young. I know Derek's way too young for this, but the question is, at what point do you pull the trigger and go to the old finger doctor, the one who, the Moon River doctor? That's at some point you got to do that. I haven't done that yet, but I'm contemplating. You never know. I need to get out there and get these tests done, but I'm not looking forward to that one.
No, I think they said 50. So I just crossed the 40 line recently, but I still got some time. So we got 10 more years of podcasts before I have to think about that one. But all right, enough of the finger doc. Let's move on here. Carolina and Philadelphia. Looks like a fun game in the NFC. Both teams wouldn't say necessarily need a win here, but both teams with 3 wins could certainly use this game. So Chop, looks like a fun football game. What about fantasy-wise? Any fantasy production here in this one? Total sitting at about 45. What do you see in Carolina and Philadelphia?
Yeah, I like it. It's not a big total. It's not a sexy game, but I think there's pieces we could turn to. Cam Newton is always in play for tournaments. I mean, I think I remember looking up last week and seeing he was sitting at about 24 points, had a very average stat line. And, Jameis is over there throwing for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns, and Jameis was sitting at like 34 points. And I remember thinking, hey, like, it's a 10-point disparity there, but that's not really that much when you consider that Newton's having just a very mundane game. Jameis is crushing it as much as he'll crush it all year long. And the gap isn't really that huge. So, like, the running of Cam Newton always puts him in play for tournaments. So, absolutely love the Cam Newton. I think Funchess is better now that Olsen is back. Takes a little pressure off of him, and it showed last week. And McCaffrey's always in the mix. Philadelphia, I think, can definitely at home get after this Carolina pass defense. So I'm not a big Alshon Jeffrey fan anymore. I just think his limited upside. He's dependent on touchdowns. So I'll stick with Nelson Aguilar and Zach Ertz as my connections. And I don't think I want to touch the Smallwood Clement, thing going on here against Carolina. Carolina might be a little bit better against the run than I want to play for those split carries.
Yeah, Cam can continue to just put up numbers. I mean, the price went down. He was 6,100 last week. He's 5,900 now, and he's basically gives you 3 to 4x every single time he takes the field. So I watched a lot of that game, and like I said, Chop, it was ugly, but at the end of the day, he finds a way to get there. So a guy I'm definitely willing to go back to. I think he's got one of the higher ceilings at the position each and every week. So, Derek, thoughts there on Cam Newton under 6K, and then the rest of Panthers and Eagles?
I definitely agree on Cam, one of my favorite quarterback plays of the week. Philly, you can beat them through the air. They're very good against the run. So I do think this sets up well for Christian McCaffrey in the passing game. He's averaging 8 targets per game this season. And it should be an interesting battle between the trenches. Philly, number 2 in adjusted line yards in terms of their defensive line. Carolina, number 2 in terms of their offensive line. So it should be interesting there, but I do like the Cam Newton call. Don't mind pairing him up with McCaffrey. Don't mind Funchess, but probably going to be looking elsewhere. And then on the Philly side, it's all Zach Ertz for me. He's had at least 9 targets in every single game. Carolina 27th in DVOA against tight ends. And I agree with you guys. I don't really want to mess with that backfield. Sounds like Sproles is getting closer to returning as well, which would only make it even more confusing in terms of the snap counts.
So, Derek, while we're on Earth, 7,100 for a tight end. Normally, everyone's going to tell you, play cheap tight ends. You can't play expensive tight ends. I probably haven't built many rosters as we record early in the week, but you think he's a guy that we can fit in cash games, or is it probably only a tournament play for you?
Definitely over on FanDuel. We talk about it a lot. Paying up at tight ends a lot easier over there. But, yeah, I definitely think you can play him on tournaments on DraftKings. It's just going to come down to roster construction. This is a season where the cheap tight ends just haven't really been working out like they have in the past. I know it's an easy route to take, but it's going to pay off if you pay up at tight end and, they have one of those 100-yard and a touchdown type of games.
All right, let's move on. Next game, we have Minnesota and the Jets. Pretty close spread here. Minnesota favored by about 3 on the road. 47 looks to be the total in this one. And, Derek, how about Adam Thielen? I mean, this dude just continues to get it done. 100 yards receiving in every single game this season. Pretty much over 19 fantasy points in every one, but 27 or more fantasy points on DraftKings in 5 of the 6 games, up to 86 4,100. Does he just become a plug-and-play here, or is it Stephon Diggs, who I know we all like, at 7,200? How we handling Vikings and Jets?
Yeah, Thielen has just been crazy. I mean, 13.5 targets per game, 32% market share on a team that loves to air it out. He gets short targets, he gets deep targets, so he has that floor, he has a ceiling. You mentioned the 27-plus fantasy points in 5 straight. He's just awesome, and 8,600 seems like a lot for Thielen, but if you just look at the workload that he's getting, he's certainly viable here. Even if Dalvin Cook's ending up playing, he'll probably be in a time split with Murray, so I do think they're going to air it out once again. I like Diggs in tournaments. Everyone always talks about Thielen, so that does lead to lower ownership. But I actually like the 3-man stack. You can play Diggs, Thielen, and Cousins because that market share is so concentrated around those 2 wide receivers. Definitely like that stack in tournaments. For the Jets side, not a lot to love here. I mean, the running backs are still getting, 50-50 or they're roundabouts. Powell's still out touching Crowell just a little bit, but Crowell has been more effective. In terms of their wide receivers, Kurtz had the big game last week. Anunwa's going to look like he's going to be out, so maybe you go back to Kurtz. 4,100 seems like a good price there. Maybe you go to Robbie Anderson. Not a great matchup. He'll probably get Xavier Rhodes. So overall, I'll probably just be stacking the 3 guys from Minnesota, maybe bring it back with Kurtz on the Jets.
Yeah, I really like Kurtz. I think he steps into that Anunwa role, and we saw it, 10 targets, 9 catches in that game. So a lot of people say it's chasing points. Well, somebody's going to have to catch the ball here, and pretty high total, pretty close spread. I think we could get a closer game than people realize. So Kurtz at 4,100, I think, is one of the better value plays. Taking an early look at thing. Chop, Vikings, Jets, Adam Thielen, going to keep rolling them out there, or is it Stephon Diggs week?
Yo, I think I got to go Diggs here. I think I got to go Diggs over Thielen this week. If for no other reason, the fact that I just think it's a mental thing now. Like, all right, Kirk Cousins, everybody's talking about Thielen. Like, this is the first week I can remember where everybody's like, oh, Thielen is one of the best in the NFL. He's kind of flown under the radar for a while now. Now he's out there on ESPN. He's one of the top. Like, I remember they were doing some rankings last night, and people were putting him at number 2 in the NFL for all the receivers out there, which is fine, but I got to think that inside the locker room, they're kind of subconsciously looking at it going, all right, we need to get Diggs involved now. Like, we can't isolate Diggs here. Thielen's great, but let's get Diggs this week and hook him up. So I'm on Diggs this week, and that's just the way I play sometimes. I know the analytics guys out there are laughing at me. I'm fine with that. I'm going to play by instinct, and I think my instinct is I want to take Diggs over Thielen this week. Can't touch the running backs this week. Latavius treated me very well last week, but there's a whole different situation right here. And on the flip side, Darnold looks solid. So, yeah, I totally agree with everything you guys said about Jermaine Kearse, and that's the route you want to take. But the Vikings are a tough defense. In all honesty, it would be tough for me to pull the trigger on any of these guys this week.
And the Vikings, I mean, in name, they're a tough defense, but, they lost some pieces. They're dealing with some injuries, and they just haven't been as good of a defense. And I think that reflects in the total. So the Jets, not a sexy team, not a team we run out to roster guys from, but I think this is a spot where you could pick your spots. And I do think Darnold to Kearse could be interesting. All right, let's move on to the next game. We got Detroit and Miami. No spread yet on this game as of now. So we're waiting to see if Brock Osweiler.
Why not? Why is there not a spread on this game?
I'm guessing because of Ryan Tannehill and old Brock Osweiler. But
yeah, Osweiler adds 3 points,
I mean, why the hell would we? It's Tannehill. Is he really that much of an upgrade to where we got to wait on a spread, Vegas? Come on, man.
Right. So I saw an interesting stat, though. Brock Osweiler, in his first game with Denver, beat the Bears. First game with Houston, beat the Bears. First start with Miami, beat the Bears. So clearly that's a matchup that he can thrive in, but do we dare go back to the well here, Chop?
Why didn't you tell me that last week, Bear?
That's amazing. That's an amazing stat, man. Yeah, I wish I would have known that.
Yeah, I wish I would have known that before the game started. Maybe I could have won $1 million. But
yeah, man.
After the fact. But do we dare even go back to this well?
No way. I can't. Like, I'm down here in San Antonio, and when they want to show football on TV, the local stuff, I usually get stuck with a lot of the Houston Texans games. So I got to see Osweiler plenty on TV, full games, man. No, thank you. I'm going to pass. That guy's, I don't know how he pulled that out of his ass last week, but he did it. Props to him, but I'm not trusting that guy ever again. So, yeah, I'm passing on that one. But it is the Detroit matchup. It could be something that they could – man, so tough here because I want to pull the trigger on Kenyon Drake, but, man, he goal line fumble last week almost cost him the game in overtime. Frank Gore actually looks good. I mean –
the OG. Speaking of OG,
you ain't lying.
Frank
Like,
Gore's an OG from the old
I
school.
would have never in a million years thought he would look this spry this year in Miami, but he looked great against the Chicago defense, ran right through him. So, and I think right now at this point, it's pretty clear the most talented wide receiver that gets any kind of volume in this offense is Albert Wilson. He's just a playmaker. So I think you could fire up Albert Wilson. I think you could fire up, I want to go Kenyon Drake, but I am worried about the fumble and the volume and Frank Gore eating into it. So maybe I'll pass on that one. But we got to be able to take players against Detroit. That's not a good defense. So on the flip side, though, yeah, just Matthew Stafford. It should be nice and rested now, and I think he'll have a field day against the secondary. And you know what? A nice sneaky play might be Kerryon Johnson. The more I look at Miami, the more they get, they can give it up through the middle. I don't want to. That's kind of why I was on Jordan Howard last week, but he screwed that up by fumbling at the goal line himself and then got benched for about a quarter and a half, didn't get any touches at all. So maybe Kerryon, who's looked really good in his limited time, can eat this defense up. But Detroit is just pick your poison. Which one? You go Stafford, Galladay, Tate, Marvin Jones, all the threat to have good games against Miami here.
And Jones back down to 4,900 again. So we talked about it the 1 week. He was under 5K. I mean, he didn't do much, but he did score. I think he's another guy you can go back to. But coming off the bye week, Derek, did they finally figure out Kerryon Johnson is our best running back? Let's get this dude the ball, or you think it's going to be more of the same with Riddick and with Blunt? Because these two teams, again, two of the worst teams against the run, we have to take advantage of it somehow. Can we do it with Kerryon Johnson?
I'd like to, for sure. But before their last game, they came out and said that he's getting enough work. And then he played 47% of the snaps. I kind of figure he's going to be right around that 50% mark. I don't hate the play, but this game projects as the slowest paced one of the week for me. And Miami ranked in the top 10 in both pass DVOA and run DVOA. And that's before last week, in their big game last week. So not really sure what to expect from the Detroit side. I'm probably going to be underweight on the field in both their passing game and their running game. In terms of Miami, I'm not going to be playing Brock Osweiler. You talked about chasing points with Curse. I think this is going to be chasing points a little bit. Drake did look pretty good. I know he lost that fumble, but he did come back and have that big first down that helped them get that field goal. I do think he's going to be viable at 4,900. And how is the self-proclaimed best yards after catch receiver in the NFL only $4,000? I don't understand why he didn't get the price bump.
I don't know. He's going to be very popular this week coming off that big game. So I don't know why they don't get that guy more involved, get him to get the ball in his hands more often, but that is the Miami Dolphins. So we'll see about that one. All right, let's move on. Maybe the game of the week here, New England and Chicago. Chicago coming off that loss in Miami was a tough one. Should have won that game, obviously, but didn't. In New England, what a game that was, you guys. I mean, Sunday Night Football was a ton of fun with New England and Kansas City. Now they go on the road to Chicago. Maybe any letdown here, Derek. Coming off that emotional win at home, Chicago coming off a loss. Who responds in this one?
Yeah, it should be interesting. Big win for the Patriots, terrible loss for the Bears. So just given the nature of the NFL, probably going to be a decent bounce back spot for Chicago. Mack is dealing with an ankle injury a little bit. Maybe that will help, the Patriots offensive line keep Brady upright. We know that the best way to beat the Patriots is with a good pass rush. And the Bears do have the best pass rush in the NFL. So interesting, or got to keep an eye on Mack throughout the week as long as he's fine. Probably downgrade Brady just a little bit. Sonny Michel's looked really good, and he's already had 21 red zone opportunities this season. That is the fourth most of any running back in the NFL. Josh Gordon, nice bump in playing time, played 81% of the snaps, saw 9 targets, and they look to get him involved early. Julian Edelman's always viable. But the guy that I just don't know what to do with is Gronk. I mean, he only had 4 targets, 99% of the snaps, which was interesting. But he has 1 red zone target all year. So I don't know what to do with Gronk. Do you guys just think there's something wrong with him? They're hiding an injury, or is he just getting older? So interested to hear your thoughts on that. Then on the other side, don't love a ton of plays here. This is a good matchup. I think it's a Cohen week over Jordan Howard. His snaps have been going up. Howard's have been going down. It was close to 50-50 last week. We know Cohen's obviously the better pass catcher of the two. Then Taylor Gabriel leads the Bears wideouts in red zone targets and inside the 10-yard line. He's also up there in air yards as well. So Gabriel and Cohen are probably going to be the two that I look to from Chicago.
Yeah, as I like to say, things I never thought I'd see in 2018 is Gronk, $1,100 cheaper than Ertz, $700 cheaper than Kelsey, and only $600 more expensive than Eric freaking Ebron, Chop. So that's a great question. I mean, he looked pretty good on that last catch when he broke through and beat a defender down the field, but any concerns with Gronk? And then Chicago side, I'm going to get my third and wrong out here, and it was Jordan Howard. I really thought this was a good bounce-back spot against Miami. Somehow landed on him in cash games to pair up with the Bears defense, and we know how that ended up. So Jordan Howard, my third and wrong. But Chop, thoughts on Gronk, New England, and then the rest of this Patriots and Bears game?
Well, we could speaking of Jordan Howard, in my one season-long league that I drafted him in, with my buddies, you could pour one out for that team over there. That team is 1-5. Looks terrible. I might have to start tanking to get the number one pick next year. I'm just about done with it.
Well, just keep playing Jordan Howard, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, I picked up Winston off the waiver wires over there and put up that big game, and I thought I was cruising. Checked the scoreboard because I only check it like once a week. Checked the scoreboard. That dude had that Thursday night game with Wentz and all those guys that went crazy in that game. Saquon. So I was already 1-5. So pour one out for that team. I'm done over there. But I only do one season long anymore, so that's fine. I'm doing. What to do with Gronk? I think you just kind of like bench Gronk here. I mean, I think eventually he has a good game, and he may have a couple of them this year. But right now, he's such a good blocker. I think they're okay using him as a run blocker, and Michelle's getting a lot of work here. In addition to that, when they do go to pass, you got James White, you got Josh Gordon, Edelman, Hogan. You got so many options out here that, like, where does he really fit in? Is he ever going to dominate week in and week out again? No, I don't think the target share is ever going to be there. So I think you're looking at 1 or 2 or 3 big weeks throughout the whole year, and that's about it. So I don't know if you want to play him week after week after week and beat your head into a wall. But I actually like the Chicago defense to make life really tough on Brady this week. And I'm not sure I'm going to be on a lot of these New England. I think this is a big letdown spot here, coming off that big win at home against Kansas City. You have to go on the road to Chicago against a top-notch defense. They didn't show it last week, but we know they are. And back at home, they're going to be even better. So I may really lighten my percentage of ownership on New England this week. And for Chicago, I mean, let's face it, I think the number one wide receiver in this offense is Taylor Gabriel. He just comes in and week out and delivers. So I don't mind some Taylor Gabriel again. Why not? New England's obviously not a great defense. They showed that on Sunday night. So Gabriel looks fine. Cohen, I'm totally impressed with Cohen. As much as I'm disappointed in Howard, part of the reason is because Cohen looks so good. So I think you could play him too. And Burden hasn't stepped up this year the way I thought he would. So maybe this is the week he does.
Can we play James White? Because I'm looking at things, and again, things I never thought I'd say in 2018. James White, more expensive than Kareem Hunt, more expensive than David Johnson, but he's given us 14 or more fantasy points in every single game. 6,900 though. Chop, can we play James White?
Yeah, I think on DraftKings you can. On FanDuel, I wouldn't do it. You're a little bit diminished on your point per reception stuff, but on DraftKings, I think you can, just because I don't see Sony Michel carrying the rock 25 times and just banging into the Chicago defense like that. I think this is a game New England has to get a little bit tricky, and a little bit tricky usually features James White.
Derek, same question.
$6,900 price tag is #nice, but I will not be playing him.
Well played. All right, let's move on. Next game, 2 games left here in part 1 of the DFS OGs podcast. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in once again here for Week 7. Let's talk Buffalo and Indianapolis, Chop. Andrew Luck, we bring him up each and every week. We have concerns. At the end of the day, though, the dude gets it done and puts fantasy numbers on the board. It might be ugly, might be ineffective, but he gets it done. Now going home, big favorites here at home against the Buffalo team that look, not great, but they play very good defense, and I think that reflects in the total here. So do we go back to the Indianapolis offense in a 43-point total against this Bills defense?
I think that this sets up okay for Andrew Luck and the Colts. I know Buffalo's been really good since that first game of the year where they got blown out by Baltimore. But, the best part of their secondary is a shutdown cornerback. Well, I mean, who's he gonna be shutting down in this game? They don't have they don't really have a receiver that really matters. That he's kind of wasted in this game. So, Luck has all these targets to spread out. He's not biased or partial. So, I think he's going to draw back and throw the ball a ton and hit all kinds of people for different targets. I'm okay playing Indianapolis and Andrew Luck. I think you mix and match him with some pass catchers and you'll be all right. So the flip side there, Buffalo, that's a tough one. I think maybe this may be the week we see a LaShawn McCoy sighting. He hasn't had even a decent week all year long, but this might be the one, though. I'm certainly not going to mess with the passing game. As much as you can pick on Indianapolis, I mean, what are you going to make Nathan Peterman and Kelvin Benjamin,
Colts defense,
Zay Jones? There's no way, man. So the only thing I could even viably think about here is LaShawn McCoy.
Things I never thought I'd say. Colts defense, Derek, 4th highest priced defense, but Nathan Peterman is the king of interceptions, pick sixes. So the Colts got to be of interest. What do you think there on the defense in the rest of this game?
Yeah, I was reading Derek Anderson might even draw the start here.
I don't know if that's better or worse.
I didn't even know he was in the league anymore. So, yeah, definitely think the Colts defense is viable. If you look at Luck, I mean, he's aired it out 62, 59, and 43 times over the last 3 games. But I don't think the Colts really want him to do that. This is a game where they're favored by more than a touchdown. Marlon Mack is back, looked really good last week. So maybe they try to establish the run a little bit more in a game where they should be playing from ahead. But don't hate the Luck play, just probably not going to get there for me. I like Cam Newton and some of these other quarterbacks a little bit more. So, yeah, I mean, I'll be playing the Indy D for sure. And then when it comes to the receivers for the Colts, it's going to matter on who's healthy. Hilton, Grant, Doyle, all questionable right now. So kind of a wait-and-see approach for me.
All right, let's move on to the last game here. And, Chop, I'm going to give you the floor here. Your team dominated Derek's team. Anything to say here?
Man, I'm glad you brought that up. Man, that was just Derek, we smoked you guys, man. You guys really ought to be ashamed of yourself after that one, man. I mean, you made a terrible Dallas offense look really good, but
I'm just glad we didn't make a bet.
Oh, what do you mean we didn't make a bet? You didn't get my message? Son of a Derek, man.
All right, so another Texas team here, Houston, going into Jacksonville. Chop, we'll get started with you. We'll let Derek lick his wounds here for a minute, and we'll get his thoughts. But Texans, let's be honest, the offense does not look great. They're playing teams that they should be dominating at home, and Watson, the numbers are there at the end of the day, kind of like we talked about with Luck, but it's been ugly. Now they go into Jacksonville, coming off that beatdown. We expected this to be one of the best defenses in the league, and let's be honest, we have not seen that. So what gives here? Does Jacksonville put it together, or does Houston's offense finally put it together?
Who we going? We're going to me first?
Going to you first.
Yeah, I'm scared. I'm scared of this Houston offense this week in a bad, as in I don't want to play them. I think Jacksonville comes out mean and nasty at home, and you're right. Everything Houston show. I mean, Watson with those pass catchers ought to be dominating week in and week out, and he's looked very average until fourth quarter when you got to turn it on kind of stuff, and that's not going to work against Jacksonville. I think Jacksonville's got a chip on their shoulder this week playing at home. It's a bad offensive line. I feel like Jacksonville's defense may be one of the better defenses you could play this week, and maybe they're going to get a little bit underappreciated because – Deshaun Watson and Hopkins and Fuller and QT, and people want to play those guys. So I think Jacksonville's defense is money. I don't like the Houston offense this week. And, Jacksonville's offense, that looks ugly too, though. That looks as ugly as their defenses look. So I don't know, man. We wanted to anoint Bortles as this big fantasy option when Fournette was out, but that just hasn't shown through these last few games. But if there's a defense he can get healthy against, I guess it's Houston. Houston hasn't looked good at all this year on defense for all the talent they have. So I think maybe you could fire up a little D.D. Westbrook. That would be my preferred option. If Fournette is out again, then Yeldon, Yeldon would be okay, and I guess you could fire up some Bortles too. But maybe this is a game where I'm fading offense and just loading up on the Jacksonville defense.
Yeah, I think that might be a smart move. A couple trends in the line. It opened up at -3.5 for Jacksonville. It's up to 5, 5.5 in some spots, and the total has been bet down from 44 to I've seen as low as 41.5 in a few spots. So I'm in agreement. I think it's defense here. I don't see a lot offensively. I guess you could take a shot with one of these Jacksonville receivers, but we know that's playing roulette. Fournette, they said maybe back this week. I find that hard to believe, but Derek, we gave you time to lick your wounds. Do your Jags respond here at home in division against Houston?
I think they do. They've kind of lost their identity over the last couple of weeks, which is running the football, playing good defense. I really hope Fournette's going to be able to play this week. Doug Marrone said that he's hopeful, so I'm right there with him. If he ends up playing, I think this is a game where they establish a run and play some great defense. I'm definitely going to be loading up on the Jags D. No interest in their passing game. Even if Fournette's out, I probably won't go that route. Houston side, the only interest on my end is Kiki QT. He only had 5 targets last week, but Deshaun Watson only threw the ball 25 times, so that's still a 20% market share. And he's just a guy that's cheap. I mean, he's 4,300. He's been heavily involved. He's playing pretty much every snap. So in a game where they could be trailing and then a game where they're going to be paying a lot of attention to Hopkins, I think QT could be interesting.
I got to ask you to, since you're in the fan club of Lamar Miller, price is down to
No.
4,200.
No. Don't put me in that fan club, man.
Oh, you were in there. You've had your moment.
I thought I could play him last week because, I mean, who thinks Houston is going to, be stuck in the last minute of a game against Buffalo at home? I thought they could get up and it was just going to be a game script play. But, man, Lamar Miller sucks, man.
He did what he does every week, 15.
Yeah, that's it.
That's the line. Derek, Lamar Miller, are we done? Are we going back to the well? What are we doing here?
No. Yeah, I'm done.
All right. Smart man.
All right, we're moving on from that. That'll wrap us up, guys.
This is this 2-touchdown game right here. Watch.
Probably. Knowing how this season has gone, he's going to win somebody $1 million. But that'll wrap us up for part 1 of the DFS OGs podcast. Thank you again for tuning in. Guys, any final thoughts here for part 1? We'll obviously be back tomorrow with part 2, the late games, and all the great user questions, of course. But anything here in part 1 you want to wrap us up about? Chop.
Part 1, no, it's pretty straightforward, but I'm looking at my RotoGrinders page and I got a blinking message from Baseballs. He got banned from Twitter. He sent me a DM on RG, but it won't let me open it. So guys, come on, guys, get behind the scenes and let me open that message. I need to see what Baseballs has to say.
So maybe we'll get to that. Maybe we'll do a little bonus content because he's usually pretty good with the questions. Derek, any final thoughts here for part 1 of week 7?
Wow, just looking at the early slate, it's pretty ugly. Outside of the Browns and Bucks and the Bears and Patriots, it's going to be pretty ugly. So it might be one of those low-scoring weeks.
Yeah, and looking at the part 2, we got 3 afternoon games Sunday night, Monday night. So that'll be a quick football analysis. Again, we'll have some fun with some user questions. But covered you with football here. Covered you with the finger doctor, as Chop likes to call him. Little fire alarm talk.
The Moon River Man.
There you go. We're covering your smoke detectors here. We're doing it all. But again, we appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in. For Chop, for Noto, I am Beer. Saying salut. We're out of here. See you guys.